This is the second of 5 recordings for Chapter 11, so we're going to talk about special depreciation methods. We have group method and composite approach, and they both are similar. They're applying straight line to either a group of assets that are similar in nature, or composite approach, it's applying straight line to a group of assets that are dissimilar and have different lives. Which method you use depends on what the assets are that you have. So, for example, if you own an apartment complex, you will have multiple washers and dryers and refrigerators. And so you would group all the washers, all the dryers, all the refrigerators, all the dishwashers, because they have the same life generally. And you would then calculate one depreciation rate for the entire group. So here's an example. This company has a fleet of cars, trucks, and campers. So they're grouping together the cars. So their original cost was $145,000, and they're going to say a residual value of $25,000, so they get depreciated cost of $120,000. They have an estimated life of 3 years, so we get straight line $40,000 per year. So this would be group, and you would enter 3 separate depreciation expenses. If we want to do composite because the different items will have different lives. So when we do that, we have to take the $56,000 we calculated and divide that by the original cost. That gives us a depreciation rate. And to figure out the life, the composite life, we need to take the total depreciation cost that we would have over the life of the assets and divide it by the monthly depreciation expense we're using to come up with the composite life. So here's, the other thing, when we're using group or composite, when we have to replace one of the assets. So if the complex has 10 dishwashers and you have to replace one of them before it's reached the end of the useful economic life, we will record it such that there's no gain or loss shown. You don't want to show any gain or loss until you're disposing of all of the assets. So when that happens, in this example, they're going to sell one of the campers. It had a cost of $5,000. They sold it for $2,600 at the end of the 3rd year. So we're going to figure out what the depreciation was for the 3 years, and we'll take we're not going to take all of that off. Basically what we're going to do is take off the cost, okay, record the cash, and according to the amount of accumulated depreciation, if we match it up, you might have a gain or loss, but we don't want to have a gain or loss, so we're just going to plug this number so that there is no gain or loss recorded. If you buy a new group of assets, you have to compute a new depreciation rate and use it going forward. If you're doing composite and you add a new group of assets, you have to just recalculate everything to come up with a new composite rate. Okay, here's an example where we're going to look at the composite depreciation rate. So the first thing we need to do is calculate the rate for each group. So we have useful depreciable base, so it's the cost minus salvage is $63,000. Cost of 50 minus salvage of 5,000 is 45. 82,000 cost minus salvage of 4,000 is 78,000. Divided by the years. So the first one has 10 years, second has a 5-year life, third has a 12-year life. And we're going to come up with a group depreciation rate. So I'm taking the straight line depreciation for each group of assets and combining them, and I get $21,800. And that's the amount of depreciation that I would record for a year. So we want to figure out what our composite rate is, because that's the rate we're going to apply to these assets. So to figure out the rate, we take $21,800, divide it by the depreciable base, and we get 10.8%. To figure out the composite life, we're going to take the we're going to take the total depreciable base and divide it by the payment we'll have recorded each period, or the cost of depreciation each year. And we get 8.5 years. So we will be taking 10.8% of the depreciable base in each of 8.5 years. Hybrid or combination methods, companies can decide to use their own depreciation method. As long as it's systematic and rational, anything goes. So they can define how they're going to depreciate, and it could be a method other than what I've shown you here. The issues if you have special depreciation, how should companies compute, special issues about depreciation. How should they compute depreciation for partial periods? You can do the nearest full month, you can do a half-year convention, a full-year convention, so you can assume whenever you buy the asset, you're going to depreciate it for 6 months, or whenever you buy the asset, you're going to depreciate it for a full year in the first year. Other things you have to look at, what do you do? Does depreciation provide for the replacement asset? And no, it doesn't. Depreciation is an allocation of cost, but it's not building up the cash that you need in order to buy a new asset. So it is not have anything to do with the replacement of the asset. The replacement of the asset comes from funds generated through revenues. And how do we deal with revisions to depreciation rates? So changes in estimates, they happen all the time because depreciation, we're estimating the salvage value, we're estimating the economic life. So when we make those changes, what do? Well, you make the change in the current period and make it going forward, so it's prospective in nature. We don't go back and change any of the previous years. So here's an example. They purchased equipment for $510,000. It's got a useful life of 10 years, salvage value of $10,000. So our depreciable base is $500,000, and we're taking it over 10 years. They've recorded depreciation for 7 years, and in year 8 they decide that the life should be 15 instead of 10, and the residual value should be 5 instead of 10. So first thing, what's the correct journal entry? What's the journal entry to correct the prior years? There is none, because it's prospective in nature. You don't have to go back and revise it with the new assumptions. You just use the new assumptions and go forward. The second, now we got to do the calculation. So first step, we have our depreciable base. We have the depreciation we're originally using, and we're going to have that for 7 years. So we have to get our net book value. So we take the 510 cost minus accumulated depreciation to date. So we have a value of $160,000. And watch, this 510 here, you got to take the cost. You don't take the 500,000. Okay, now we're going to take that 160,000, which was the carrying value, subtract the new salvage value to get the new depreciable base, and then divide it by the number of years. So we had done, it was 10 years and we did 7, so we had 3 left, and we said that we went from 10 to 15, so 5 additional years, so there's a total life left of 8. So the journal entry for the current year would be based on this $19,375. All right, here's an example. They purchased a computer for $8,000. They used straight line depreciation over 5 years with a $1,000 salvage value. And then we're going to change the estimates in 2015. So we're going to decide that it has a salvage value of $500. And they'll be able to use it for 6 years, another year. So, first step, figure the original depreciable base, come up with the annual depreciation. We have depreciated it for 2 years because we're at the beginning of 2015. So we can calculate our net book value is $5,200. And we're going to take that net book value of $5,200, subtract the new salvage value from it to get the new depreciable base, And we say that now there's 2 years remaining, so that gives us our annual depreciation for the last 2 years of $2,350.